Hi folks, Wooden Boat Dan here. Just wanted to give you a heads up. The podcast you're about to listen to was recorded several years ago, so some of the phone numbers, email addresses, website links, and time-sensitive information are no longer valid. Please keep that in mind as you listen. If you'd like to contact me, my email address is woodenboatdan@gmail.com. Thank you and enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Hooked on Wooden Boats weekly podcast episode number 106. I am your host, Dan Matson, aka Wooden Boat Dan. If you can't do it, well, it's probably been attempted by people that think they're really good at stuff, but maybe they've been unsuccessful until Dan stepped in and made it happen. And this is the world's first podcast fully dedicated to celebrating the art, craft, history, tradition, and romance of wooden vessels all over the planet. Welcome to the podcast today, folks. I'm glad that you're tuned in and listening to Wooden Boat Dan today. This is the podcast about getting into the wooden boat game, and there's no professional speakers on this podcast. As you can tell, it's all about having fun and being yourself. And hey, if you make a little blip or blooper on the tape, it's usually not a big deal. Today's featured segment is an interview with Bruce Blatchley. Bruce is an instructor at the Northwest School of Wooden Boat Building in Port Hadlock, Washington, and he has been a guest on the show before. In fact, if you want to listen to a previous interview with Bruce where he talks about his personal boating history, go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/022. Today's featured segment with Bruce is it's part 4 in the Interview the Expert series on the various construction methods for boat building. And so far, we've gone over Carvel planking, episode 99, stitch and glue, episode 104, Lapstrake construction, episode 105. And today, Bruce is going to be discussing strip planked boat building. And we're going to go through the usual questions about the history and description, what the method involves as far as skill level and tools and special other requirements that may be required. Requirements that may be required. Oh, well. So anyway, stick around for the interview. I think you're going to enjoy it. Well, this past week, I did work on my Scamp a little bit. I'm finishing the last 5% of assembling the kit. Then I'm going to be advertising, offering it for sale. And if it doesn't sell, then I'm going to go ahead and continue to work on it and probably sell it as a finished boat sometime next year. If you are interested, you can shoot an email to dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com. I've got about 200 hours into it now, about $4,500. I've got the seat combings installed now, and I'm doing the cabin sides and the cabin top next. And then that's pretty much it. Then the kit is fully assembled. So I'm getting there, hoping to be done here in the next couple of weeks. Well, I'd like to give a shout out to new subscribers to the newsletter and mail list: Alan Judge, Joseph Price, Case Turner, and Gobna Saliba. Welcome to the podcast, folks. If you're not subscribed yet, I would encourage you to do so. Go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. Give me your email and your first and last name, and you'll get my monthly newsletter. It comes out around about the second or third week of each month. And then occasionally I'll send out other updates and fun information besides that. So if you're not subscribed, it's time to get on board, folks. I've got 2 ebooks for sale on my website. One is my own book called Get in the Wooden Boat Game, a guide for building your first boat. It walks you through the process of deciding. Sorry about that little bing in the background there. My email did that. So I'm going to actually turn my email off. Okay, there we go. Anyway, my book is basically a guide for building your first boat. So it walks you through the process of figuring out what kind of boat you should build, how long it's going to take you, what it's going to cost, what kind of workshop you need, what kind of tools you might need, those sort of things. Pretty basic, but it's a good primer for somebody that's going to get in the game. The book costs $4.99. It's an ebook and it's full of links. If you're interested in that, you can go to hookedonwoodenboats.com/ebook1. I also have a book called Epoxy Basics, Tips and Tricks for Working with Epoxy Cleanly and Efficiently. This book is written by Russell Brown from Port Watercraft. Russell is an epoxy expert. And I personally purchased this book and have read it and learned a ton from it. Lots of great information, just little tips, big tips, good stuff. That book costs $5.99. If you go to my homepage, hookedonwoodenboats.com, you'll see a picture of it there on the right. And if you click on that, you can purchase the book. And if you do purchase that book, I get paid a small commission. So thanks in advance for that. Well, as far as upcoming events go, this Saturday I'm planning to go to Chelan, Washington for the Mahogany and Merlot event there. I think it's the third or fourth event. They're going to have hydroplanes there that were built in the 50s and 60s out of wood racing. They're going to have some antique wooden boats there, antique cars. It should be a lot of fun. I'm going to take some pictures and hopefully snag some interviews along the way. There will be a future podcast about that. If you are going to be in Chelan by any chance this Saturday, let me know. You can give me a call at 425-319-7800 and we'll hook up. Okay, we're going to move on to the interview now with Bruce Blatchley from the Northwest School of Wooden Boat Building in Port Hadlock, Washington on strip planking. Take it away, Bruce. Actually, before we roll that tape with Bruce, I wanted to add a couple things here that I did last week. I was down at Cannon Beach with my family, which is a nice little village, coastal city on, not a city, but a coastal village in Oregon State. Real quaint little place, kind of touristy. There's a famous rock there called Haystack Rock right on the beach. Went down there with the fam and had a great time. But about 2.5 days into it, it started just pouring rain like crazy. And I'm sitting inside the condo thinking, oh man, I got to do something. I got to get out of here. So I got to thinking, you know what? I think there's a skin-on-frame kayak guy near where I am at, a guy that has a shop called Cape Falcon Kayaks. So I hopped on the internet. I found out that his shop was in near Manzanita, which was about 20 minutes from where I was. So I hopped in the car. I didn't have an address. I drove to Manzanita. First I went in the bakery. He said, hey, do you know Brian? He builds kayaks. No, I don't. So then I went over to the local lumber yard, and this is a small town. We're talking maybe 1,000 people, something like that. And they go, yeah, I think maybe he's the guy out in the red barn. I'm thinking, how many red barns are there in this county? It's a very rural area. Anyway, they said, yeah, I think that's it. So they gave me directions. So I drove about 10 miles through the woods, got out to this spot, drove down this long driveway. Here's a great big old red barn with a bunch of cars parked in front of it. So I popped in the side door, and it was kind of dark in there, but I could hear some voices, and I'm like, hey, anybody here? Go around the corner, and here's a classroom with 6 people in it building kayaks. And I'm like, yeah, is Brian Schultz here? And Brian comes up, introduces himself. So anyway, Brian was in the last day 6 of his class where basically you build your own skin-on-frame boat. And there were 6 students there that were just finishing their boats. So I got to hang out and chat with people and take some photos. And that was really fun. Kind of a pleasant surprise to meet Brian. And I know he teaches classes all around the place. And one of those spots he does is in Northwest Maritime Center. And he's got beautiful boats. They're called F1s. They're his own design, seaworthy boats. Really interesting guy. He showed me around the shop and showed me some slabs that he had cut out of some logs that he found and some cool stuff. So anyway, that was pretty fun. We're going to try to hook up for an interview at some point. And then, so I drove back to the condo, and then on our way home, we stopped in Astoria at the Columbia River Maritime Museum. The executive director there is a fellow by the name of Sam Johnson, who I've met, I believe, one time at a Pacific Northwest Maritime Heritage Council meeting. Sam's a bronze casting expert. He teaches classes on it. Anyway, it was a Saturday. Sam wasn't there. We went in the museum. I'd never been through it before. It was phenomenal, folks. If you ever get to Astoria, Oregon, you've got to see this thing. They've got unbelievable displays of all the maritime history on the Columbia River. And the cool thing about it is I grew up boating on the Columbia River with my family in the 60s and early 70s. And Astoria is right at the mouth of the Columbia River where the Columbia empties into the Pacific Ocean. And the crossing there is called the bar, where the river water meets the ocean. It's a super treacherous area. They call it the graveyard of the Pacific because so many ships have sunk there over the years and so many lives lost. And I used to go out there fishing with my dad when I was a kid. We would take our boats anywhere from 21 feet in length to 36 feet. We'd go out over the bar. We'd have swells of 20 to 30 feet. No problem. We'd be out there fishing, catching salmon like crazy, having a blast. Anyway, the museum has a lot about the history of fishing in the Columbia. It has a chart of all the ships that have shipwrecked out there. They've actually got some retired Coast Guard boats inside the building. Some wood and some metal. And which is kind of interesting because one summer I worked at Ilwaco Boat Works in Ilwaco, Washington, which is right on the river, and we were repairing a Coast Guard boat at that time called the Invincible, which is a self-righting rescue boat that was used there on the coast. Anyway, it was a phenomenal experience, just really great displays, tons of information. I could easily spend 6 or 8 hours there. We were only there about an hour and a half because we had other things we needed to get done, like driving home 6 hours, but anyway, it's a fabulous time. If you get a chance to go to the Columbia River Maritime Museum, check it out. Check out their website. If you Google Columbia River Maritime Museum, you'll find that. So anyway, it was a really great time, and I just wanted to add that to my introduction here. So we are now going to officially move on to the interview with Bruce Blatchley. Take it away, Bruce. It is August 22nd, and I am on the phone with Bruce Blatchley from the Northwest School of Wood and Boat Building. Welcome to the podcast, Bruce.
Well, thank you, Dan. How you doing?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Oh, just fine.
You're now in the distinct group of interviewees who have been on the show 3 times or more.
Oh, is there an award coming?
That's what those guys keep asking me. I go, no, there's no.
We should get a T-shirt or something.
Yeah, exactly.
On a wooden boat.
Yeah.
All right.
So I appreciate you taking the time for the interview today. As you know, we're going to talk about strip planked boat building, the method of construction, which kind of ties into my ebook that I recently published. Mm-hmm. So maybe we could start, Bruce, with a little bit of history and description of the strip plank method of building.
Well, sure. I can talk to the method for sure. History, I really don't have a clue as to how far back it goes. I know that with the advent of new adhesives, it's definitely expanded the scope of what can be done well with strip planked boats. A lot of people make their first building experience from strip plank canoes, and it is literally edge gluing, moderately long pieces of usually around these parts red cedar together, just edge to edge around a mold, and using that mold as the hull form. And it's a really quick method and very easy to fare, and lends itself to a variety of different hull shapes.
So you have to start with a strongback and molds or something like that, Bruce, is that right? Or how do you start it?
That's right. And depending on the thickness of the material that you're building with, mold spacing, it can vary. On a canoe, a small canoe where the thickness of your material is 1/4 of an inch, the frequency of your molds would be greater than, say, on, for example, the Bob Perry double ender we just built here at the school. We had 2-foot intervals on the mold spacing, and we had 1-inch thick red cedar strips for that boat.
And that was a 60-foot boat?
62-foot double ender, yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we've really expanded the range of possibilities for the method.
Yeah. So on a canoe, maybe a 14 or 16-foot canoe, would you have your stations every 12 or 18 inches type of thing, or?
Sure. Yep. What you're looking to avoid, and most of the let me just say that most of the boats and plans and kits and everything, it's spec'd right there for you. Your molds are going to be, at this interval on the strongback, and you don't even have to think about it. Mm-hmm. If you're doing your own design, just brand new design, then you would have to know what the frequency of the molds are, and that would be dictated by the hull shape for one, but also the flexibility of the material at that given thickness.
So Bruce, you either have to mill your own strips or buy them already milled, is that right?
Well, it is a lot more cost effective to mill your own, and it's really not that big a deal. What you want to net are strips that are vertical grain, or at least quarter sawn. So when you buy your lumber, it's preferable to get a flat sawn plank and then mill it to your specifications by simply ripping off strips at the given thickness that you need for the project.
Okay, so if you buy a flat sawn board and you rip off a 1/2 inch and you turn it 90 degrees, then you've got vertical grain?
That's the idea.
Is that the idea?
Yep. Yep.
Interesting.
And let me say that you want to, when you're ripping your strips, you want to make sure that you have enough material to run them all through the thickness planer so they're uniform, and you're presenting a really nice clean face. So if you want to net 1/4 of an inch, you might want to go ahead and add a 1/16 or more to that thickness coming off the table saw, so you can run it, both faces through the thickness planer.
Okay. And are there different join methods between the planks, Bruce?
Sure. You can do bead and cove, square edged. Some people do tongue and groove, and I haven't seen it, but I've seen it illustrated like a shiplap. I have experience doing the bead and cove and just square edged, and they both work just fine.
So on a square edge, are you going to have a little gap there, depending upon where you are on the hull?
Yeah, and the kind of beauty of that is because of most of the hull shapes, the gap will close at the back and be open, outboard, and that gap is exactly what epoxy likes to have. So if it's getting to be, too extreme, then you can do like a rolling bevel on that edge until you get through a tricky part on the hull or a more shapely part.
Okay. So is it simpler to go bead and cove or square edge, Bruce?
Well, here's what I've found, and I'm not going to tell anybody what to do, but I'll tell you what I've learned is that with the smaller boats, going with the more flimsy planking, the bead and cove is really, really the way to go because they register and they are almost self-bearing. And I thought that method would be ideal for building the Bob Perry boat, and it turned out to be a real hindrance. So what we did was remill all the planking and take the bead and cove off of them and go to a square-edged plank. And then we, in between the molds, we'd shoot plastic nails down through the edges to get clamping pressure and to align them. and that worked out great because we could fare, the whole length of each strip and get them just nice and fair.
Interesting. I didn't realize you changed from bead and cove to square on that one.
Well, it's not a widely publicized fact.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was a little, not embarrassing, but it was like oh my gosh, I'm amazed that didn't work as well as we had predicted. But it just wasn't working out for us on that boat.
Yeah. So in the strip plank construction, then you build your strongback and your stations, and then you put your strips on and edge glue them. And then do you always or typically put cloth and epoxy inside and outside that, or what?
Typically.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really reticent to say words like always and never. So
yeah.
I'm going to say typically, yeah. And see, in the building method, we make a really longitudinally strong shape, hull form, but it isn't really worth much until you put some other member in there to tie athwartships, right? From shear to shear.
Yeah.
And the cloth is what does that, and other internal structure. But the cloth really unifies the whole hull. In this case, we're talking about a hull, but you can build other boat parts out of the method, like cabin tops and stuff. So, yeah, to answer your question.
Okay. And then in between there, before you sheathe, obviously, you fare the hull with sandpaper or a plane or whatever works for the job.
Yeah, and depending on the size of the boat, you might go up to using what we call a rotary planer. It's a big right angle grinder with instead of using a round pad, we make these flat square pads that we use spray glue and glue on the sandpaper to them, and they really do a great job of fairing. And the square pad, well, this is one of the things that you shouldn't try at home, but they won't allow the edge to dig in. So you're, like with a round pad, you can divot and dip and make all kinds of unfairnesses in the hull. But the square pad, moving at high RPMs, allows you to take down the highs really quickly, and in a practice hand, make a pretty quick job of doing the initial fairing. And then, of course, as with almost all boat building, you're going to resort to the longboard at some point. I
see, which is a big. It's a board that's flexible with a big piece of sandpaper on it, kind of long and narrow.
Generally, yep.
Mm-hmm.
And there are off-the-shelf ones that are fantastic, and we make our own sometimes for specific areas on the boat, and sometimes we want them to be really stiff. 3M makes a couple of big hook, what do you call that, Velcro type sandpaper, and one is very stiff and the other is sort of flexible, and I think they're probably about 3 feet long. And that's a single-person longboard. There are times when you want a multiple-person longboard on a really big boat, and that's definitely called a torture board.
Now, these longboards aren't to be confused with what you were surfing on last weekend, right? No. There's a lot more pleasure in surfing on a longboard. That's a fact. But the outcome, let me tell you, the outcome of using the longboard to sand with is just amazing. I mean, you have all the difference of, like a really sweet-looking boat or just an okay-looking boat. And even the untrained eye can look down the side of a hull and notice, unfairnesses. And maybe they don't even realize, why or what they're looking at exactly. But I can guarantee you, with a good paint job, the fair hull is going to just pop. Yeah. Bruce, what level of skill would you say is required to do a strip plank boat?
Well, to do it well, intermediate. I mean, I guess, well, shoot, beginner to intermediate, really. There are other parts. The hull, stripping up the hull is just one minor part of the boat. And even in the case of the canoe, you got your stems and your keel and gunnels and whatnot, and breasthooks and that kind of thing. So, yeah, beginner to intermediate, and somebody who's got patience would be good.
Mm-hmm. And the strips themselves do not need to be steam bent. Is that correct when they're installed?
Usually not. I'm thinking, on a lot of, you may be familiar with this from your building experience, and a lot of canoe hull shapes, they go from a really flat run and all of a sudden twist up to almost vertical at the stems. And with the 1/4-inch planking stock that is generally associated with that kind of, a canoe or a kayak, generally you don't need to steam them. But it sure would make it a lot easier to get that twist in there if you did. The thing that I think most people avoid doing the steaming is because it's a lot of time eaten up there where you could be putting planks on, and you can edge set and twist with a plank wrench, and get that thing wrestled down into place and glued up, usually without having to resort to steam.
And what type of glue do you typically use on the edges then, Bruce, to hold them?
Well, epoxy.
Okay.
And in the smaller boats, let's say in my past, Type Bond 3, so just waterproof wood glue. But on the Bob Perry boat and things that are expected to perform well, for many lifetimes, we're going with epoxy.
I see. Okay. Any special tools, equipment, or materials needed, Bruce?
If you're going to make your own strips, and it's sort of recommended if you have these tools, a thickness planer and a table saw and a router table would be really handy with a Bead and Cove bit set. And those are easily obtainable. The 1/4-inch stuff, there's no problem to find the Bead and Cove set for those. And, gosh, there'll be molds to cut out and stuff, so a bandsaw would be great, but you can do it with a jigsaw probably. And a couple of hand saws and a block plane, and you should be well on your way. Okay,
very good. And then is strip planked, I have a hard time saying that. Is strip planked best suited to any particular shape or style of boat, Bruce?
Well, I'm going to have to say that it doesn't really matter what the hull form is. I did years ago an Atkins sailing canoe that was really kind of slab-sided, and we ended up going with strip planking, but we made the strips 2.5 inches wide, so we covered a lot of ground quickly. And then you've got canoes, which are very shapely and double-ended, but it shouldn't be limited to double-enders by any means. There's tons of examples out there that have transoms and different hull forms, and if I could indulge you for 1 second, I gotta say it's a great way to start a cold molded hull is to get your strip planking done on your first layer. So you've got a longitudinal set going in, and then double diagonals after that. And the strip planked layer allows you to vacuum bag against it. So not only is it in itself a really viable method, but it also is a really great start for a more up-to-date, more composite, if you will, building style, cold molded construction.
Now, you guys are doing that on one of the boats there, the Sentinel 24, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for anyone in your audience who's going to be at the boat festival this year, we're going to launch that boat on Friday of the festival.
Oh, wow. September 6, 2013.
Yep, 5 p.m. We'll have a big old party.
Oh, very cool.
And, yep, we just took her up to the yard yesterday, and she looks great.
She's going to be launched at the Maritime Center, or where at, Bruce?
Sea Marine.
Sea Marine, okay.
Yep, just at the north end of Point Hudson.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's really cool. Congratulations on that one.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, we're all pretty excited about that.
Yeah, definitely.
And then it'd be really cool if we could get a Sliver up here, but I don't think she'll be in the water in time.
Right. Okay, so then, so it sounds like strip planking works good on a lot of different shapes and styles of boats. It can be round, it can be flat. It doesn't really matter that much. When you start talking about 2.5-inch planks or strips, I start thinking, man, that's getting close to Carvel planking.
Well, right, yeah, right.
It's kind of a hybrid almost.
Yeah, kind of. And that may have been pushing the limit, except for the fact that the wood was really dry, and we weren't worried about it changing shape or anything too much. Yeah, I'd be a little worried about going too much wider than that. And, truth be known, on a boat like that, a sailing canoe, plywood probably would have worked just fine.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. How about the amount of time it takes to build a small boat using a strip plank versus other methods of building, like maybe a stitch and glue or something like that?
Well, usually the two, between a strip plank and a stitch and glue hull, you can have either a boat that's round bilge or a boat that has chines. So that will be the big difference between what style you go with. And then, if we're just talking strictly about boats that can be strip planked or some other round bilge method, then I'd have to say that strip planking is one of the fastest ways to get the hull done.
Okay, and so an alternative method for a round bilge would be cold molded, possibly, or Carvel planked.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's going to take more time.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
okay.
Sure.
And what? Any other thoughts on the pros and cons of strip planking as a building method, Bruce, especially for somebody that's kind of starting out?
Well, I think one of the big pros is that you can take it real slow, and literally, if you're a 9-to-5er and you've got family and you're only going to get out to the shop for 2 hours here and there or 30 minutes here and there, you can get stuff done and actually make progress on the boat and not be committed to huge blocks of time. I can't think of any cons, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And do you know I think there's companies that sell kits for strip plank boats, is that right?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. We actually have, or we did have a place up in Anacortes that sold the strips, and if somebody wanted to go ahead and buy them ready-made.
And you built a surfboard that was strip planked, right?
Yeah, the deck I did cedar strip, and the bottom I just did plywood because there was no shape with workships. But, it worked out great.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And used darker and lighter woods where I wanted accents and stuff, and it turned out good.
Very good. Okay, well, as promised, I thought I'd give you a couple minutes here at the end, Bruce, to talk about the Northwest School of Wood and Boat Building. You're an instructor there, so tell us why people need to sign up and go to school there and what you guys are up to.
Well, they need to come to school here because we're the best boat school in the world, and we offer a huge array of different building styles, and our major programs are traditional small craft, traditional large craft, and then our composite program. And between the three of those, it's just a great experience. And we've got a year-long program that results in an associate's degree. And our students come from around the world, and we teach craftsmanship. And that's really the plug right there. It's we really love what we do and build some incredible boats and give people a real good launch pad for careers in boat building or whatever they go into. But a real good skill set, and we hope to a person a real good experience.
And the school year starts in October, is that right, Bruce?
Yeah, real early in October, and then we run through mid-September.
And the boat school's web address is nwboatschool.org, is that right?
Yes, and we've got a fantastic website. If you just punch in Northwest School of Wooden Boat Building, have a look. It's got everything on there, and the images are really great, and I think it conveys the experience really well.
Very good, very good. And you head up the composite group, is that right? Composite boat building?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very fun.
Yeah. So, this year, we mentioned a couple of times the Bob Perry boat, really a canoe shape, just happens to be 62 feet long and going to be real fast. But, yeah, strip plank boat, sheathed on both sides, and a lot of internal structure, but really a big canoe.
Wow, and that's amazing.
Yeah, I can't wait to see her out on the water.
Yeah. You probably see her just for a second, she'll be gone, right?
Hope to be on her at the time.
Yeah, exactly. Very good. Well, anything else you want to add today, Bruce?
No, I just appreciate you calling, and thanks for all your work.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So have a great day there at the school, and we'll talk soon.
All right, look forward to it, and we'll see you at the boat festival.
All right, thanks, Bruce.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for doing the interview, Bruce. As always, it was a pleasure chatting, and wish you the best there at the school as your school year. Actually, I think it starts today or tomorrow around October 1st, so good luck to you there, Bruce. If you would like to connect with me, you can do so by email, dan@hookedonwoodenboats.com. Subscribe to my newsletter, as I discussed earlier, by going to hookedonwoodenboats.com/subscribe. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest, and YouTube if you search for Wooden Boat Dan there. And you can leave a voice message if you go to my home page, hookedonwoodenboats.com. There's a little button on the right that says send voicemail. If you click that, you have 90 seconds to record a message from your computer. So I would encourage you to do that. I love to get the audio messages. It's really fun. I've got some advertising banners on my website. If you'd like to help support the show a little bit financially, I earn a small commission if you make purchases from West Marine, Jamestown Distributors, Amazon, any purchases. If you click through my website, I get paid a small commission, and thank you for your support on that. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the show, you can do so through iTunes. If you go to the iTunes store to the podcast section, search for Hooked on Wooden Boats there. You can subscribe to the podcast, and you can also leave a review if you enjoy the show. I would appreciate it if you would leave me a review there and some constructive comments. Well, thanks for tuning in today, folks. As winter approaches here in the Northwest, the whole boating activity thing slows way down, but I'm going to keep the torch alive over the winter. That's my job. Keep people enthused and active. I think I mentioned last week I'm going to be speaking at the Northwest Maritime Center on building your first boat. That's November 20th from 12 to 1:30. And then I'm also going to be speaking at the Center for Wooden Boats March 21st, 2014. Same class there. I'll be giving a presentation, passing around samples of different boat building methods, so it should be a lot of fun. And if you're interested in that, shoot me an email and I'll give you more details. Well, I hope you have a great week, folks. If you're not in the game, get in the wooden boat game now. Keep the bright side up and the barnacled side down. Wooden Boat Dan, over and out. God bless.